welcome to Coproduce Care's Chat for Care this evening on a Wednesday, a very hot Wednesday. So we're all kind of steaming up. I'm trying to keep my cardi on because otherwise I show too much skin, but it might have to come off if I'm melting in the heat this evening. But anyway, it's lovely to have you here. I am so excited for this live stream because we've got two fantastic guests who I'm really looking forward to introducing you to. But before I get onto that, what I wanted to do is just to say that if you're watching on wherever you're watching, don't forget, if it's YouTube, please subscribe. And if it is Facebook, then please like our page. Please like what you're seeing, thumbs up, and share. If you're on Twitter, you can also just any old comments on hashtag chat for care. And of course, we're doing a lot of these. We do stream them live, but mainly it's for people to kind of watch back later. So please make sure that you are, joining in and sharing, even if you're watching us back later, and joining in the debate. What we'll do is we'll have all of the anywhere that you need to see the people that we are going to have as presenters. We're going to make sure that they've got their Twitter accounts and however you can contact them on here as well. So just stay in tune with it all, really. So tonight, we're going to be talking about inequalities in health and social care. Particularly, we want to look at what is the experience for students who are studying health and social care, and also how we might have new solutions of how we change the outcomes for people. We've got so many awful stats for non-white groups across health and social care, whether it's the care that you're receiving, whether it's being a care worker, social worker, whether it's being a student studying. There's some crazy stats. Some of the ones that we pulled out: women across all ethnic groups except other are earning less in total each month than the national monthly average for the NHS staff. In 2018, 19.1% of workforce in the NHS trusts were from a BME background, yet only 6.9% of very senior managers were from a BME background. And then when you're going on to statistics within education, so this is one from the UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, and someone did a Freedom of Information request, and it revealed that in the last 3 academic years, so that's 2016-17 to 2018-19, of the total of 19,800 PhD funded studentships awarded by the UKRI, which is an organisation that awards studentships, so scholarships to students to study for a PhD, only 1.2% were awarded to Black or Black mixed students. So that's also another stat of 30 people who are from a Black Caribbean background. So what we want to really dig into is enough of the stats, or bored of the stats. Stats are everywhere. They make your jaw drop. And then, what do we do? Do we just move on? Do we have solutions? Well, I am delighted to have Sharon Jennings and Yannick Yalipende. And we're going to be talking about the two things that they're going to be doing in terms of supporting people to people and organizations to get rid of these statistics, these bad statistics, and improve what is the situation right now, whether it's in with universities, whether it's in organizations. So we really want to look at solutions. And my two guests tonight are really fantastic in the way that they've thought about this, and they've acted on some solutions of what we can do. And it is too much to cover in half an hour for each person, or an hour of this session. But we really hope that this will maybe gather some thoughts about what people can do within their organizations, share what we're doing and what they're saying, and do encourage people to come along to the conversation. So before I get on to introducing them, I just have a bit of news about Coproduce Care. So people who don't know us, we're a non-profit organization, which I started a year ago, and we are aiming to try and democratize the care debate. So opening up to more people and stop sort of the lack of information about health and social care amongst the general population, and also enable people who work in health and social care to actually have a voice, so people can hear from their point of view what are the issues, how they're coping with them, and also they have some amazing ways of co-creating solutions. So this is the platform that we've created. It wasn't meant to be about live streams. It wasn't meant to be about YouTube, but we're just using this because that's what we've kind of fallen into. We do other things as well, but check out our website to see what we do. But one of the things I'm really pleased to talk about before we move on is that we're going to move on to something slightly different for Coproduce Care and our chats. Not just talking about in-depth commentary around issues of health and social care, but also we're going to start doing paper reviews. So if you're listening to this and you think that's a great idea, then do put your comments in the comments box. Also, if you want to do a paper review, and when we talk about paper, we're not talking about broadsheets. We're talking about the huge amount of information that is online. So whether that's blogs or whether that is articles in magazines like Community Care, or whether it's articles people have done about mental capacity, anything that is out there, information by a reputable source, we want to start talking about and creating a little bit of forensic commentary around it. So we're really excited to get people involved in that. So if you're a student studying in that area, then shoot us an email and say you want to do a bit of commentary with us. Or maybe you're somebody working in social care, a registered manager, and you think I could do a bit of that, then do get in touch, and we can start doing that hopefully on a weekly basis. So that's enough of me. I always do babble too much on these. I'm really sorry. But I'm going to introduce Sharon, and I'm really excited to have her on. So hello, Sharon.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Hi.
How are you this evening?
I'm good. Like you, it's a bit hot, but I'm okay. I'm good.
It is super hot. And yes. You and I met, it was about, just over a year ago. I can't believe it's gone so quickly.
Yeah, it has.
And actually the event that we met was to do with equalities or inequality within health and social care. It was a Skills for Care event.
Yeah.
And you're a lecturer at Goldsmiths University of London.
Yeah.
And you lecture social work.
That's right.
I was just taken aback by all the things that you were doing, and then we kept in touch. So I think maybe start off with some of the conferences that you have tried to sort of develop. And the latest one that you did, and kind of what it was about and why it came about. I think that would be good.
Well, I mean, the conference, the latest one actually wasn't one that I organized. It was actually organized by Research and Practice. But a colleague and I, my colleague Joan Fletcher, who's also a senior lecturer at Goldsmiths on the social work program, she and I were asked to run a workshop at this conference. This conference was taking a critical view of critical perspectives on resilience and the importance of resilience, how we define it, what it is. And we were asked to run a workshop looking at resilience from a race perspective within organizations. So how can organizations, in the way that they operate on all levels, the formal, the informal, with regard to policies, practice, are they embedding social work and social care values? So they're written in the policies. Are they embedding them? And how do those practices? How does the the organization operate in a way that promotes resilience for Black staff? And we looked at it specifically with regard to Black people, Black staff. And we kind of looked at that from two levels. We looked at it in terms of, and it kind of echoes some of the stats you were talking about, the lack of representation of Black people in senior management in social work and social care. So the percentage is better when we talk about frontline social workers, but as we move up the hierarchy, those numbers slip away, and the percentage of Black managers in senior positions is very low. And so why is that? Well, we kind of asked the people who came to our workshop, why do they think that is the case from their perspective? And people talked about, they had a range of reasons, but it's kind of like, there were no surprises there. Anything from, people talked about things from unconscious bias, which is a term we might want to challenge, but unconscious bias, to actual lack of visibility. So when Black staff aspire to going for senior positions, but actually don't see themselves reflected there, there's a doubt about whether that's for me, whether that is a place for Black people. So it's that lack of visibility and the effect of that, right the way through to racism, plain and simple. People not knowing about certain, how people are, how leadership positions and leadership training, how that's discussed or not discussed with Black staff. So people don't get the opportunities because they don't know about it. And then people actually having experienced racism and being discouraged. So we kind of looked at that from that leadership perspective. But I think what I've kind of taken from that is the combination of what organizations can do, or what this is some of the things that we talked about in the workshop as well. What organizations can do and how they can approach and thinking about this from a resilience perspective, but also what we as Black individuals, Black people, can do in terms of developing and sustaining and promoting our own resilience. So that's So that's kind of what that conference was focused on.
Brilliant. So that's and you said that actually when you had a workshop within that conference, and I think it's the same conference.
Yes,
and
it is the same conference.
You were quite surprised with the actual issues that came up, because what was the title of your workshop?
Oh, I think it was. Oh gosh, I should know this.
But it wasn't to do with race. I don't think race was in the title.
It was. Yes, race was in the title, but it was something like building on strengths. It was that sort of. I could actually look it up really quickly if you. But yes, it was clear that it was about race. Race was in the title. One of the things that surprised me was that we had been given a message about this conference. This conference actually took place outside of London. It took place in Leicester, and it was just before the lockdown. It was like a week before everything kind of locked down. We were told that this was going to be a very diverse conference, and so when we planned our workshop, we were thinking about we would have a diverse group of people coming. So we were thinking about how we and I guess it's actually some of the things maybe Yannick might talk about and something we think it's about. Oh, who are we talking to when we're presenting this stuff? Are we talking to Black people who know this? There are no surprises here, or are we talking to white people who say they don't? And we wanted to kind of pitch it. We wanted to be something that was aspiring and inspiring. We didn't want to kind of go with, here is the negative picture. This is the way the system doesn't work for Black people. It's all very negative. It's all very,
which is exactly what you hear all the time in the media.
Absolutely. And we were thinking, we did not want any of the Black delegates to go away feeling more negative and ground down. So we wanted to pitch this as, yes, we didn't want to fudge anything. Everything we said was true, and it was the real situation. But we wanted to come from a strengths-based approach. We didn't want to come from a deficit model. And I think looking at it from an organizational perspective, we kind of, in some ways, we did acknowledge that everyone has a personal responsibility for their actions and their reactions. But we also have to think about, and what is this organizational context like? So we were kind of acknowledging, like, it's like the analogy, like if you are a goldfish in a goldfish bowl, you as the goldfish can be as healthy and as strong and as positive as you are. But if the fish bowl, if the water is dirty, if the water is murky and unhealthy, it's going to affect you eventually. And that's what we wanted to focus on. We didn't want to look at this deficit model that Black people, and I think we're very aware of some of the, I guess, the kind of conversations about about that deficit model of why Black people aren't in leadership positions. And we wanted to look at some of the obstacles, not the internal personal stuff. We wanted to look at, what is this organization bringing or not bringing that's actually an obstacle to Black people, both in terms of leadership and in terms of resilience as well. Because we saw that kind of an understanding, a critical understanding of resilience was very much linked to, well-being, a personal, individual well-being, one's mental health, physical health, one's whole self. But it wasn't, there's also, I guess, a perspective on resilience. And again, we can challenge, I do challenge that, is that you're kind of born with it. And so if you're not resilient, if you kind of break down in one way or another, it's kind of something lacking in you. And I think that, again, we wanted to really challenge that view and say that, specifically, if we're talking about from an organizational point of view, we have to look at, what is this organization doing and not doing, and what the impact of the organization on Black staff specifically.
Yeah. And I think that's really helpful, because you often hear, maybe not so much now, the last few months, but you'd hear a lot of rhetoric around, oh, well, that one Black person has made it, so you must be able to make it. When we talk about resilience, people would say, just pull yourselves up with your bootstraps, just get on with it, work hard. You hear a lot of that rhetoric from the government, just work really hard. That's what you need to do. Some of us have made it, so you all can make it. But actually, like your analogy with the fishbowl, it's not as simple as that. If you are in a environment which isn't conducive to support you, where you've got that psychological unconscious bias, and I really do want to look at that in a minute, it's really hard for people, and it's kind of trying to help people to understand it's not as easy as just pulling up your bootstraps. What if you don't even have boots in the first place? What if you're not enabled to do these things? So I want to dig more into what you've got, these two strands of resilience. So you've got the individual resilience and you've got the organizational resilience. What does resilience mean for each one of those strands that you discuss?
Well, I think if we look at resilience as, there's a lot of definitions around what is resilience, but it is that ability to, I don't know, I want to say survive, but I think even more than that, it's something about to thrive, I guess, even when there's adversity, if there's difficulty, if there are problems, and I think I wouldn't challenge that as a definition. I think where I would challenge is where does it come from? Where do you get your resilience, and how does it work? But yeah, so how does it work? How does resilience? Can you tell me your question again?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, you've got these two bits of resilience. So the way that you look at it, you've got the individual resilience and you've got the organizational resilience. And I kind of just wanted to explore, maybe individual resilience first, because it's not what you might automatically think. And then think about the kind of organizational resilience.
Yeah. I think that, I think for Black, and thinking about it for Black people, I think resilience is about survival. So I said I didn't really want to use the word survival, but actually it is about survival, and it is about sustainment. How do we sustain ourselves? And what are all of the things that we think and do and could do and are doing at the moment that are about sustaining ourselves and keeping ourselves here whole, not just, and it's more than just keep going. It's more than just keep putting one foot in front of the other. We do that. We do that. We do that very well, but often at a cost. And so what are the practices? What are some of the things that we can do or we are doing, and build on the things that we do that can, that's about our survival. And I guess it's about seeing things like that notion of self-care, individual self-care. How do we care for ourselves? This isn't an indulgent practice. This isn't some, I don't know, middle class, thing that you can, take or leave. This is essential. It's essential to our survival that we look after ourselves, that we embed a caring, as while we're doing all of this hard work and putting our feet in front of the other, because we have to keep going and we have to keep moving. We also can rest. We can build in rest, and we can see stopping, occasionally stopping a lot, as valid, just as valid, because we need that. So I think that's really important. And really, I mean, I'm kind of borrowing from Audre Lorde here, but this is it's a revolutionary act. It's political warfare. I think she calls it something like, you know what I mean? It's not just indulgent. So that's the personal thing. And I do think that we owe it to ourselves to keep ourselves moving, because we know if we think about organizationally, if we think about societal, the kind of issues that have been happening, that have been, bombarding us recently, these are examples of it, I guess, of how the system is not working for us. The system is not made for us. It's not made for us to survive and thrive. So we've got to take responsibility for that and be active in that way. But
I would challenge that. If you've got an example of how that might work. So how would you take charge when the system isn't working for you?
Well, I'm saying that we need to take responsibility for our survival and our self-care, because we know the system isn't set up to do that. Yeah. So we can, and even when we feel that, we can, historically, there have always been some one-offs, some initiative, something that's been a little bit about helping and supporting Black people along the way. But it's often, superficial, short-lived. It doesn't change the system. It doesn't change the system. It's like a Band-Aid on something that's huge. So when we think about our survival, I think it's important that we have ways in which we prioritize that we don't. I mean, yes, I'm not saying that the system shouldn't and won't. I'm saying that we have to. We must. We have to.
And I think those are really strong messages, because you find with all of this happening, there's a tendency for I've definitely seen in my community, like burnout, where organizations have come to Black people or non-white people have said, right, the agenda now is to help you lot, you know, and so you're non-white. Can you do this? Can you carry forward this agenda? Can you and there's a whole heap of stuff that you think, oh wow, I have to take this opportunity because it may never come again. A whole heap of pressure, plus all of the things and the videos you're seeing on social media and the news reports all the time, and that's quite psychologically damaging and you've got all this pressure as well, and you find people are just having to remove themselves for a moment and say, I actually can't do that. I can't reply to all these WhatsApps. I'm just having some me time because it's just a lot. So I think that message that you've got there is really it's okay to say not right now.
It's absolutely okay. And I think we, we might feel that, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe culturally, we might feel we're not doing enough. I don't know about you, but when I was raised, it was about, you have to work hard. You have to work twice as hard as anybody, so there was this hard work, aspirations. You work hard and you get somewhere and you keep trying to get somewhere and you keep it moving. And so we might culturally, I don't know what people might think of this. I hope people can comment on this. We as Black people might feel that if we slow down or if we stop or if we rest, we can't, because this is too important. And I think that, and when you talk about burnout, either burnout of communities that have been exploited till there's nothing left, or individuals, we have to stop. We have to be able to say, not now. It's not to say this isn't our stance forever, but as much as we are active and moving forward, we also need to rest. I just think about how do we, and because what sustains us, it's kind of like what serves us and what sustains us. That's I think is the question. And those kind of initiatives that you talked about, where people come into the Black community and say, look, here's some money, go and do this. The question is, how is this sustaining us? How is this serving us? Now, there might be a little bit in there that serves us, but for how long and at what cost? Is this really for us? Is it helping us?
Absolutely. That is what I was just about to come on to. So the organizational side is, is it for us? So there's a tendency as well to see organizations say, right, I want good stats on what we're doing with, BME, BAME, however they want to categorize us, people. So they'll give us a piece of work to do, but then not let us own it. They will say, this is what our organization has done, even though we have run it.
Yes.
So, moving on to your idea of organizational resilience, how can organizations not do that and do some other helpful things for us?
I mean, I think what organizations and we are, and I certainly at the conference and the work that I do, I'm thinking about, although it probably applies across the board, but I'm thinking about organizations, social work and social care organizations that are founded on particular values, and those values are human rights, social justice, equality, valuing diversity. Those are the values that are written in the policies. They're sometimes in the name of the organization or the name of the team. This is what it's all about. And basically it's what is the disconnect or connect between those espoused values and the reality of being in and being a part of that organization. And that's what organizations need to think about and look at is, are we embedding those values at every level, so every hierarchical level, and also in every process? So from recruitment to allocation of work to promotion to pay to everything that this organization does, the way we communicate, the conversations that we have, and especially I would say if it's around race or diversity of any type, is this an organization where you can openly talk about race and the experiences of Black people, and can we openly talk about it? And begin to move towards solutions together, separately or together. However, I know that I know of my work with social care and social work organizations, the training that I do, the teaching that I do, that one of the things I know is that when you start talking about race, people start feeling uncomfortable, and then nobody talks. Nobody knows what to say. They're scared to say the wrong thing or whatever it is. I don't know what the issues are, but it's something that isn't talked about. It isn't.
I suppose these spaces now are helping us to talk more about these things. But in talking about spaces, it's almost like resilience together. How can organizations help individuals protect their resilience or increase their resilience? And you've talked to me before about how social, helping social work students think about their how they might be conceived as other or different as a positive. Like, you have so many positives within your history or your culture, and also helping organizations on the organizational side, saying to them, create these safe spaces for non-white groups to support each other.
And be supported by the organization. Because I think, and that's something, one of the things that we're kind of currently, we're trying to kind of find and create spaces at Goldsmiths, not just in the social work team, but across the board, safe spaces where we can talk about, these, particularly around race. How do we do it? And we don't know yet. We don't know, and we're trying. And to some degree that's working, in other degrees it's not. So it's not to say that the answer is an easy one or a quick one, and it's not to say that the answer is not a difficult. It's going to be difficult, and people are going to be upset because these issues are very they're embedded. They're embedded in our society. They're embedded in the way we do things. They're embedded in the way we think. So any change is going to be hard fought and hard won. But it's, what are we trying? What are we trying? And how do we know that's working or not working? And what are we doing? How are we moving on to something better? So I would say that maybe we need several types of spaces. Maybe we need Black only spaces. I do think we do. Because I think there are things that we as Black people need to discuss amongst ourselves. There are a range of issues around diversity among people who identify as Black. We've got issues around colorism. We've got issues around just who we are and how we define ourselves. What term do we use? I'm saying Black. There are some Black people who I would visibly or politically identify as Black, and they wouldn't. So, there isn't necessarily a consensus, and it isn't necessarily a conflict. But this is our stuff to chew over together. But then I also think there's room, and there's needs to be joint spaces between Black and white staff. I think there probably needs to be white only spaces too, because I think that my heart really sinks when we get into a mixed space to talk about race, and the only people talking are Black people, and usually it's about their pain and suffering. And so for me, that's not a conversation. We're not talking. It's just like a monologue, because we're not getting anything back. We're not getting a reflection back. We're not getting any. So I sometimes think that there needs to be a space for white. I think white only spaces where white people, because I don't, and I also think, and I think that some of that silence, if I'm looking at it from a positive perspective, not a negative one or a cynical one, trying to be positive. I think people just don't understand it. I really, and I think, some people would say, no, they do understand it, but it's the power. It might be that too. But I think white people need to talk about white privilege. I think they need to talk about not themselves as victims, but themselves as perpetrators of the inequality of racism. I think they need to kind of get a handle on that and to talk about that, not to necessarily feel proud about it, not necessarily to feel ashamed about it, but to examine it and acknowledge this is what this is. It's not something else. Yeah. This is white privilege. Yeah. Because I think what happens is when we do have those mixed spaces and Black people speak about their pain and suffering and their experience of inequality, there's either the silence, you get the silence because people don't know what's there, or you might get defense. It's like that Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. You know what the hell? You know, that
I know.
do you know what I mean? It's kind of like.
Yeah, I am literally. We're getting into the real meaty stuff here, and I want to carry on, but I really want to bring Yannick in as well.
Okay, yeah.
So I know we haven't covered unconscious bias, but maybe we can come back to you after we've talked to Yannick, because I know he has to go to work later as well.
All right. Okay.
He's also working in healthcare, so I need to be mindful of that. But I would say that the white spaces I thought was a very good point, and I hadn't heard anybody talk about that. And the reason I think it's important is because when you do get Black and white people together in a room and you talk about these issues, and you have some white people who just don't get it, they honestly don't get it, or maybe they say they don't get it, and their arguments can be quite how do I say, hurtful, I think, to us. It's like psychological damage, because the fact that they so don't get us, and they so don't understand the experience that some, non-white groups, Black people are going through, can be, I think you could just literally see people being drained by it, and it hurts. So just having a space where they can just amongst themselves get to grips with it before
work it out amongst yourselves.
But also coming together. I mean, someone's saying that he doesn't agree with Matthew saying in the comments segregated spaces, but I think maybe, Sharon, you're probably just saying there's a space for all of it. Like,
see, I think what people want ideally, is mixed spaces. And I would say that probably is where we're trying to get to. We are not there yet. We really aren't.
When we're talking about spaces, we're not talking about working spaces. We're just talking about when we create like a forum to discuss these issues. It's not kind of like segregation back to,
no,
anything like that. It's just saying, when we say, oh, let's have a forum discussion meeting about these issues, maybe we just need to separate the groups to appreciate that. And their different experience. Okay, fantastic. We will come back to you if you could hang on with us while we speak to Yannick. But thank you so much. Let's take you out for a moment. See you shortly. Okay, so before I introduce Yannick, I'm just going to say a couple of things. Yannick's studying also at Bristol University. We actually met at the organisation that I'm heading in care, but also we didn't really meet there. We actually met at university. We realised we were also studying at Bristol University. But it's also another thing that's going on, which I would highly recommend you getting involved with, is a FACE conference. FACE conferences normally take place every year, run by Dr. Foluke Adebisi. She's actually, incidentally, also one of my supervisors for my PhD, which is on hold at the moment. But she is running this fantastic online conference now, instead of her doing it face-to-face in 2020. And she's running every day this week, every day at 12 o'clock lunchtime, different conferences, different talks, different speakers about various different issues. And I would highly recommend that you get in touch. They're talking about Pan-Africanism, talking about people's experiences, also talking about post-colonial theories, and all the issues that you might, I don't want to get too kind of technical and academic about it. I don't want to turn people off in that way, but I would say hopefully we're going to share the link in the chat, that you've still got a couple more days that you could tune in and listen to that conference. So the Forever Africa conference that she has going on online with some fantastic speakers. When I tuned in, there were at least 60 people there from university, from community groups, talking about decolonizing the curriculum, what that means, the experiences of people, again, a little bit about the stats, but also about what we do with it and how we come together and deal with these issues. I know it might seem that I'm going a little bit outside of health and social care, but I think that everyone would agree that these issues just cover everywhere. So in order to help understand the background behind it, I think you should definitely stay tuned and try and join those webinars tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday lunchtime. Okay, and there is another thing I need to pop up about social work webinars here. Another something that might be connected with what Sharon might wanted to talk about, but again, these are a series of webinars for people who are studying social work. So I'm going to bring in Yannick. Hello, Yannick. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm not so hot now. I have a fan and it's working okay. Did I say your name right? Your surname?
No, you said it. You said it right. One of the two versions, one of the two alternatives, but you said it right. It's
okay.
It is really hot. It is really, really hot. But
yeah.
I was gonna say, I was listening to the entire conversation. There were so many nice, soft, like spots for me to land in, and I was just here, just thinking, I really want to jump in on this. But yeah, it's so many amazing talking points and stuff that potentially needs to be expanded on and just talked about even more. It's just it's such a great conversation. I really think.
Hold those thoughts you have, all those things you want to jump in about but you are like doing so many things right now, and I think to put it in context so people can understand how, you know, we're lucky to have your experience with us today, because you have had experience of so many different things, from working in health and social care to being a student to setting up your own organization to deal and discuss Black issues, so issues that Black people within university are facing. Maybe start with your studies.
Well, I did all my stuff, my undergraduate and my master's at the University of Bristol. So I started off with experimental psychology. Wait, can you hear me? Or
Perfect.
Awesome. So yeah, so I started experimental psychology, and then I came across applied neuropsychology as a master's, and it was such an interesting course. And considering the fact that I want to go into clinical psychology, it was 80% of the content was taught by clinical psychologists. The academic director was probably one of the smartest individuals I've ever met in terms of, and when I say smart, I mean he's a jack of all trade and master of a whole lot. So it's like he's just, you know, it's just, so I was very inspired by that, and I just thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna jump into this. And I think it's the things I've learned from it, the perspective it's given me on just like mental health, and it's just further broadened all of that. And I'm currently completing it. I'm in the process of, you know, just couple exams, final exams, and also handing in my dissertation, which is looking at Black men, the barriers and facilitators of Black male mental health, Black male students within university when it comes to accessing mental health services in that university. So it pretty much all goes hand in hand with my passions and what I do, and my initiative also is within that line. So yeah, it's really packaged in a I think the secret to doing a whole lot is to make sure that there is an underlying similar theme in all of the things you do. That is the secret to actually being successful and doing a whole lot. That was actually advice that my project supervisor gave me in my undergraduate, which was, yeah, just if you really want to do a whole lot, just make sure that there's a common theme within all of them. And that way it's like it's not necessarily constantly doing something novel. I know that cognitively it's important to do that, but then it's a thing where you can recycle things or cognitive processes that you may have used in one instance and then use it to another. And it all just makes it that much better as an endeavor if you jump into it. So that's essentially in a long-winded kind of way.
I love that. And I love the fact that, you know, so we've placed you now, we know what you're studying, and, you know, we know what your passion is in terms of like where you want to go with it. And I often say to people, and I said to you this before when we spoke, a lot of the Black people that I know, we aren't just doing one thing. We always seem to be doing so much. And you do have that common thread, which is great, but you know, you're working, you're on shift at 9 o'clock, I think it is tonight. So you want to make sure that you have time to breathe and have a drink of water.
I've actually cleared that schedule out, but yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. But you would normally be. You're doing your master's at the moment at Bristol University, and how I realized some of the work that you're doing. You started a scheme, and I will let you talk about it, but I'll bring up what it is now, called Black Men Talk. And when we discussed it, it was about, or when I've heard you talk about it, it's about understanding the fact that actually Black men's mental health, there was very little places for people to go, very little spaces that were safe for people to come along and talk about what the issues they were going through and not feel ridiculed or feel that they had to be macho or anything like that. And that's what you created within the university, within fellow students, and that took off fantastically. So can you maybe just kind of take over explaining how successful that was and what the feedback from that particularly Black Men Talk was before we go on to where it is now?
Oh yeah, it's it essentially started from personal experience, personal lived experience. I in my undergraduate, I had quite a difficult time. It's no secret, and I'm quite vocal about this. I have depression, and I also and anxiety, and these are things that just these are things that I struggle with every now and then. And those were amplified by the fact that I obviously transferred into my second year into University of Bristol, and I started off as a mature student, of course. And it was a very difficult time. So not only being aware of that and seeing what the state was for Black male students within the university, also being aware of the fact that university is actually it's a microcosm of the society in which we live in. So whatever happens in university, obviously there are specific pressures, but those pressures are also echoed in the wider community. So I then thought to myself, let me set something up, a space where we could talk and have these conversations, because obviously with the whole side perspective of just like hypermasculinity and this idea of the perfect male archetype, where you can't necessarily show any sort of what you would deem as weakness in terms of discussing and your mental health and times when you're down and all that. So I set this up for that purpose. But then as I set it up and as I educated myself further, as I looked back in my experiences, as I looked at my community, I saw obviously that a lot more was needed. And I guess we can go into what it actually became and how it developed and all of that, if you want me to go into that now.
Yeah, before that, there was a story where, like, when you first had your first session, I think the reaction of some of the students, that release. Yeah.
It was my first session. I thought I would go at it quite hard in terms of really see where we are in terms of how comfortable we are with our emotions. So in a group of 17 men that managed to show up, obviously I did mention that we had pizza and stuff like that. So that they came in, they came to the session, but obviously we mentioned the food and all that. So we had provisions set in place. So when they came into the session, one of the questions that I posed and one of the themes were, when was the last time you cried and why? And then as you would imagine, no one really said anything. And it was until I had to sort of like talk about the last time I did, then slowly you could see that people started relaxing and people stopped looking like on the floor or on the table, and they started actually voicing. And so slowly it became a cascade of stories around family, stories around failure, stories around feeling inadequate, stories around just feeling helpless, stories around feeling lost. And there were 3 individuals that actually burst into tears. And I think what, like I mentioned before, what actually made me stick to this and realize the importance of this was that everyone stood up, and well, a majority stood up and like supported them, had a hand on the shoulder. Like, I think there was some tissue somewhere or something to help the different people that actually were crying. And seeing that and thinking, that's not something that I would normally see. I would expect this in like a more adult setting, maybe a more elderly. But to see that at that stage just made me realize, wow, this can be done here. This needs to be done at all stages, at all generations. This is not just a thing where you've lived life, you've come to understand what it is to actually, understand masculinity and what it is and what it actually isn't. So that's how I knew that it was definitely important. And so from then, sessions kept going, kept being even more successful. We even ventured out into creating a session specifically for Black women. So it was a Black women talk session. Then we created sessions where we would bring everyone together, make it a Black women and men talk session where it's all joined, because I felt like whereas it's just like just like Sharon mentioned, where it's important to have these discussions where you feel comfortable to have these discussions, it's also important to be aware of the wider context of the fact that you still exist in this world. And the only way that a very good way to, we need to come together and sort of heal and sort of build that resilience. Because speaking of resilience, it's like we need to sort of build that back up, because every single time, I think someone mentioned something once in terms of resilience, that it's like a pot, and it gets, and it's full of resilience, but it depletes over time. So you need to put yourself in spaces where that can fill back up. And I feel like, obviously, as Black people, with all the trials and tribulations we go through, a lot of times we operate on empty and we don't actually realize it. So us operating on empty, going through, so we think, like Sharon mentioned, resilience is not something that is fixed, that you have. It's a thing. There are times when you're at your most, and there are times when you're at your lowest. And if you go through life going through trials and tribulations all the time, it would be at its lowest. And so sometimes I think theoretically that's potentially something that could explain what resilience looks like for us. So essentially, so that's what I did with Black Men and Black Women Talk. We heal each other, we understand each other. If it's crying that we need and get that emotional perspiration, we go through that, and then we come together and heal each other in that context, and then we're ready to go out in the world and potentially do that, because that's essentially what it is. We need to talk. There is talking therapies, the principles of talking therapies, the Ubuntu, principles of therapy, narrative principles of therapy, the humanistic perspective, the fact that we're all equipped with what we need to self-soothe. Those are the principles upon which I built Black Men Talking, which obviously evolved later on. But those are the principles upon which I built it.
That's brilliant. I mean, there's just so much in that. It's fantastic. Just fascinating talking to you. I'm just going to bring up, so this is the new, this is what's coming, the branding you're looking at. So it's gone from Black Men Talk, Black Women Talk, to now Black People Talk. And I think it's important to see that journey of how it's evolved. Because I don't know anyone who's doing exactly something like this, and it's concentrating at universities. This is something that you had going on. I don't know the date, but it was.
It was last week. It was last week, but it's essentially my dream when I set up Black Men Talk at University of Bristol. It was just to do, to have it at the university. But slowly, as I started realizing what it actually meant to us, I said to myself, okay, I need to make sure that this is, I want to try and set this up in as many universities as possible, because I can see that this formula works. We've been operating for 2 academic years at University of Bristol. So I know, like, we have, there's outcome measures. We've looked at so many things. We've done research around it. We have like a training pack. We are looking at, there's so much that we've created, and we have a formula. So now we had the chance to approach King's. Obviously, it was presented to it. Me and my co-founder that I brought on board in order to help me with that. We had the chance to present it, and so what we're doing at King's right now is that we're having weekly sessions. It's a pilot stage with, obviously, we'll be looking at having the entire sessions and the initiative next academic year. But at this current stage, that's what it is. So we're just looking at delivering these sessions because there's a real need for it. That's essentially it.
So if people wanted to find out more or get involved, or is it best to email you? Or I know you're on LinkedIn, so that's another way to get in contact, because people might be listening and think, you know what, I'd love to learn more to take it to my university or whatever.
It's obviously being a master's student and this being quite a hard master's, there are many things that obviously, and setting up this initiative, because essentially until very recently I was a one-man army. I haven't been able to like set up a website and stuff like that. I've done things around it, but as it currently stands, all of those things are now in development because I'm tethering off to the end of academia and all of that stuff. So it's really
finally.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. Like, I know COVID came and kind of wanted to thwart our plans this year, but we're relentless when it comes to this. We are looking to it's a very exciting coming academic year. I've received interest from many universities that actually want to set it up. So essentially, we will be bringing that package to those different universities, training the students in order to implement Black People Talk sessions. The way it's essentially, the way the initiative looks right now is Black People Talk is the umbrella term, and there are different chapters within Black People Talk. So
Yeah.
the BST is the Black Students Talk chapter. So it's essentially anything dealing with academia. It could be Black students as in like college students. It could be Blacks as in, when I say college, I mean college like as in like sixth form, and Black university students, academics, masters, PhDs. Those are the spaces that is for that. It's within a purely academic setting. I've received a couple messages, and I've been speaking to a couple people that are looking to sort of like implement this formula once I'm in the process of tailoring it to a more corporate setting. So that is potentially a situation where a chapter like this will be set up in a more corporate setting, wherever it is the Black people are.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I definitely want to keep track of what you're doing. And in terms of health and social care, I really want to think about how we can then do more of that kind of stuff. And I'm definitely going to bring Sharon in to hear her views on it. But also I'm gonna bring Sharon in again to talk about unconscious bias.
Yes.
So are you okay to hang on for a moment? I'm just going to get her to talk about that, and then I'll bring you both in together.
No problem. I'm here. This
cool.
is really interesting.
We will see you in a second. Thank you so much for that, Yannick. That was so inspirational. Hello, Sharon.
Hi.
Back again. Wasn't that great?
That was absolutely great. That was great. And I wanted to ask, has he contacted anyone at Goldsmiths?
Oh,
we
will ask him that shortly. What about, so let's go back to unconscious bias.
Oh.
So someone did ask about it in the comments. They really want you to talk about it. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Okay. I think I don't buy it in the way that as a blanket term. I do believe it's something that exists, but I think the way that unconscious bias gets used, it's almost like I didn't know what I was doing. How can I be held accountable for what I do if I don't know, if it's unconscious? And I think it's not so much unconscious. I think people do. So when people talk about that was unconscious bias, that was an example. It was an action. It was something that somebody said. It was a decision that somebody made. They knew what they were doing. What they may not have clocked, or is the wider picture, is the bigger impact, is how it might impact on Black people. Say, for instance, that they hadn't thought that far. But to say that the whole thing was just unconscious and it was beyond me and it had nothing to do with me, I think I guess that's what I mean about we need separate spaces so people can kind of work through that. Because I guess, when we're in mixed spaces and people come up with unconscious bias, I know a lot of Black people get angry. They get angry and like, I don't buy that. Yeah. And then what are we doing then? What are we doing? I think if people really do believe that their white privilege or the way they buy into it is something that they don't have full awareness of, I'll take that. You may not have full awareness, but to say it's unconscious really takes that accountability away, from the person.
Yeah, I've often heard it called a get out of jail free card.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I kind of have sympathy on both sides. Like, if you honestly have somebody who, because we have so much of this bias built into our media, our education system, so it's almost fed in. I look at how my sons are being taught. It's fed in from a really early age. So our norms are embedded in us really early, and what we accept and what we decide is different, and what's marginal educational wise, and what should be taught in history. That's already embedded there. So then you have people acting in a way that's saying it's unconscious. I can understand.
But I think,
come up with it.
Yeah,
But I just don't think this day and age is acceptable. I agree with you.
Absolutely. And I think now because we know, just like you said, we know what the terrain is. We know that this stuff has been embedded in us a long time, and from historic, history and what we're taught, and through all of our structures and systems within. So we know that that's not a surprise anymore. So we can be, and I think people can be more on the lookout even for this. I think because our awareness is raised as a society, we can't go backwards. We can't act like we didn't know this. We do know this.
Okay.
And so it makes I guess it just makes, for me, the unconscious stuff is a little less unconscious, and it's more about taking responsibility. And yeah, people are going to slip up because it is embedded. But I think it's something about taking responsibility for your unconscious bias and work on it and be on the lookout for it. But also when you get feedback on it, not to get defensive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think it's for me, it's how it's used. It's how it's used.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. I'm going to bring Yannick in as well now, so we can. There we are, Yannick. Hello, and I'm just going to unmute you there. So, in terms of your thoughts there, Yannick, on the idea of unconscious bias. Did you have? I mean, we didn't plan to talk about this, but I'd just be interested to hear your thoughts on it.
I think at the start of it, yes, I can understand how you can have unconscious bias. I just think that right now, as in when I say right now, as in 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe even 30, there's no time for unconscious. It's impossible. You can't not be. I mean, yes, there are anomalies in every single situation. It's not a blanket thing. You can be part of a pocket community where you really might not have. But I'm saying if you live in, whether it's Bristol or London or these big metropolitan cities and stuff like, you cannot. I think it is a cop out. It is definitely a cop out, because it's like you have to be aware of the fact that these things are happening around you. And if you're not aware of it, then it's either you're not. If you're not aware of it, then that's privilege. Then that's exactly what white privilege. The decision to close your eyes to it. That's the typical rhetoric of "I don't see color." It's the same. It's the rhetoric of "I don't see color." It's impossible. If it's not as it's like calling it all the way unconscious. I feel like it's not right. It's somewhere it's on the spectrum of unconscious, but it's definitely not fully unconscious. There is a consciousness. There is a choice. There is every single person that says unconscious bias has come across a situation where they could have been like, "Ooh, is this? No, it's not. Surely it's not." I've seen it happen so many times. I mean, Dr. Sharon, you were talking about just like what it's like in social care and just in the industry itself, and it's pretty much echoed in where I work right now in a mental health hospital right now. It's like the higher ups and even your colleagues, they are aware of these things. They are definitely aware of these things. Like I remember I was having a very, very difficult conversation with a colleague. I use the term loosely, a colleague, and they mentioned something around, these agency workers, they come in and they often are, they're often African, and they often are very lazy. They don't necessarily work hard in order to do that. They don't feel like they're part of the team. And then I said, and I thought about it to myself, and I thought to myself, you promise us when you get the job, because I'm bank, when you get the job, you promise that yes, there's mobility within it. You can get promotions if you work hard, blah, 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 blah. But you don't see any of us up there. Yeah. So you're not going to aspire to that. And you also realize that there are so many pitfalls to actually reaching that top. Other colleagues that would actually, someone that has been there like years after you, that is put in a position above you. So why would we invest into that? Surely we're going to go via the route of being agency, where you get paid a whole lot of money. it's like gambling. You're just edging your bets. Why would you invest into a situation where you're never going to truly be appreciated? What I would, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm pursuing clinical psychology and I need this experience, I would go agency 100%, because I'm going to make more money, do my business, do my work, get out, because I am not going to climb the ranks. There is nowhere to go. There is no road.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that's such a good point.
And I think what Yannick is kind of demonstrating is that, and I think this is going back to the kind of organizational resilience, is how organizations view Black people. And that aspiration, what you've talked about, is Black people coming into organizations are aspiring to get up there, to do whatever it is, or go, if it's sideways, if it's up, it's us. It's how it's from our, I don't know, from our family, our background, whatever. This is kind of built into that hard work. We're hardworking for something. We're not just hardworking. We're hardworking so we can do better. And parents have always want their children to do better, that sort of thing. But organizations don't recognize that. And so somehow we come into the organization, and how we're viewed, our strengths, the things that bring us, mean that we can aspire to go up, aren't valued, aren't understood, are often seen in a negative or in a deficit model. We don't have enough of something, so that's why. So you know what I mean? It's kind of like a not valuing and not understanding. So you're right. Black people will come in and work very hard and then leave and go somewhere else and take all of those strengths and those skills and those aspirations and take it somewhere else, start their own stuff, start their own thing, develop their own thing somewhere else.
Which isn't, that's not such a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but I think from an organizational point of view, what have you lost? Look at what and we're talking about social work and social care. What have they lost? What have they lost?
What I wanted, I know we're kind of a little bit over time, but I just want to ask one last thing. And that is positive discrimination. So I have done a couple of interviews which really surprised me. One with Roy Lilly, who used to be a CEO in the NHS and for Foundation Trust, and I think all trust. And then another one with John Browder, who also was the same, used to be a NHS CEO. And I asked them the question about, is there a problem? And they both said, yes, there's a real issue. And we're talking about the NHS now more, with almost like not nepotism, but like this group think within the, and there is an issue with people promoting people they know rather than people that they think are qualified to do the job. So that was great. And it's odd, if you want to watch back at our YouTube videos, they say it, they're quite honest about it. We really appreciate that. But also I asked John Browder, I said, do you think we should have positive discrimination? And he said, I think there's a place for it. So in these times where we want to get away from tokenism, we want to stop saying, okay, talking about unconscious bias training and all that. Do we need to think more about, we need to just kickstart this thing and say, it's an unfortunate term, but you know what I mean when I say it, positive discrimination, which might actually,
you mean like positive action, like what was called positive action. So they ring-fence certain positions or something, or courses or something for Black people to redress imbalances.
It needs to be renamed and reconceptualized, but as we understand it now, people would say, right, we need to be supporting people from who we haven't normally supported because there's something going on with the system, and while that gets sorted out, we need to just bring those people up.
Well, see, I think that I just thought I'd throw that out. Bring in Black people to the same old system? No, because what will happen is they won't survive. The system won't have changed, so it won't sustain them. The system is, if it's a corrupt, unequal system, and you're saying bring more Black people in it, but the system hasn't, they still will be in a minority position. They still won't have much power to actually change the system. We've seen that happen. People get burnt out and move on. we've seen it in the NHS, we've seen it in social work and social care. Do you know, it's not a sustaining solution.
Yeah.
The system has also got to change. It's not just changing the face of the people up there. It's about changing the system so that those people can, you know, so that people can actually they can lead. If we're saying we need more Black leaders in these organizations, we have to make sure that the system sustains their ability to lead, rather than continue to fight obstacles, because that's what often Black leaders find. They're still fighting those same obstacles.
Okay. Yannick, last word to you on this one.
I 100% agree. I just want to point out just two things, just from what you, Dr. Sharon, from what you said. There is a vacuum, as in like there's a pressure that causes for ethnic minorities to not be in certain situations. Therefore, to rebalance it, it's only right that positive action needs to happen. That's at a very black and white. Obviously, it needs to be implemented in a way, but from a very black and white perspective, yes, that's cause enough for it to need to happen. On the other hand, just like at universities, the mass, we let in 12 more Black students this time around, and then let them out into the university and let them strive, when you're still going to get the microaggressions. You're still going to get the even just a simple thing like, when you want to, like, for example, in my class, in my undergraduate, there's a specific journal that does review of psychological papers, amazing journal called the Cochrane Reviews. I only heard about it in my master's class. And it's not like I'm not a studious type of academic that I go out there and I search for things. But when you feel like you feel some type of way about going down and then asking questions or putting your hand up and stuff like that, because you're not going to, this is just a little example of how you may not access the same knowledge that someone that just, you have no pressures whatsoever. You just get up, hey, lecturer, what about this? I'm struggling with this. Tell me this. And then that's it. And you have it. That's just an example. So I fully agree with you when you say that the system needs to change. It's not even just the system needs to change. The system needs to make room for nurturing processes or streamlined processes that can allow these people that you're bringing in, that you're so-called, whether it's tokenism or whatever, and especially during this time right now, whatever reason you're doing, if you're bringing these people in, don't just add to the dire statistics that we are seeing, where we're going into university and we're leaving with 3 3s, if that even exists, or like instead of 2,
No, I think it's very true. And I think, one of the things that we're trying to do with, when you think about academia, so you've got Black students, and they're there. But certainly at Goldsmiths, there were reports coming out last year. Someone did some survey about the experience of Black students, and the anything from microaggressions to down and out, your voice is not valid here. Your perspective as a Black student isn't valid here. We're Black students' experiences. So, And I'm not saying that this, I'm saying two things. The system needs to change, as you say, that can nurture difference. But I think also to allow Black students or Black people to also bring difference. So it's kind of two things. The system has got to be buoyant enough so that there is room for Black people to come as students or as leaders or as whatever, and bring the difference that we say, that's what we want. So it's so much more complex than just that numbers game.
Absolutely. And the whole issue around diversity. Sorry?
This is a 6-hour conversation.
I know. I have
really
to open up. I'm really sorry. But yeah, I was just going to say the whole diversity thing and inclusion. I know that I have an issue with it. I'm sure I've probably talked about it on here before. It's not as simple as just putting different faces in different places. It's so much more complicated than that. But this was a fantastic conversation to start with, and I so value your time in spending with us here. I know you're both from the health and social care background, so it's fantastic to have you both on here, and we covered so many different issues, and I just want to thank you both so much for coming on. I will let you carry on with your evening, and I'll just finish up here, but thank you both so much, Sharon and Yannick. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
So that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. If you want more of this kind of stuff, then please do let us know. You can just tell us on Twitter. You can make sure you subscribe on YouTube, and obviously like our page, please, on Facebook. We really appreciate that. It just helps bring more people to the channel. And if we're going to create this new channel that's specifically about news and views around social care, I don't know if there's anything like this that's streaming every week. We're putting a lot of effort into this, so please do get more people watching, during, after, discussing, whatever. So thank you all so much. We're back again tomorrow night. That's Thursday. We are going to be talking about, I don't know if we can bring up the overlay for this. But yeah, we're going to be talking for another panel of guests specifically around registered managers in care services. So how are we supporting them? How are we coaching them? How are we supporting their own resilience? And what needs to be done? And the Talent for Care is the organization we'll be talking to. We've got two guests from Talent for Care, and it's going to be a really good discussion again to hear about registered managers. We don't talk about them so much. So what do they need? What do they say they need? And this organization that's providing that support, especially around COVID-19. So if you can, do tune in again tomorrow, 7 o'clock. We'll also be offering some discount to some of their training if you do tune in and subscribe. And we'll really look forward to seeing you then. And for now, have a lovely evening. Take care, everyone.